I am going to discuss the important ideas of Aristotle given in Nicomachean Ethics. And I told that Nicomachean was just the name of his father as well as his son. Fine. So, from in the Nicomachean Ethics, Aristotle makes this statement. He says that he says that political science is a master science. Fine. He also says that political science is a master science, architectonic in nature, from which all other sciences take their cue. Fine. So, in exam, they can ask you to discuss political science as a master science. So, I told you that for Aristotle, political science is a master science. Because of three reasons. There are three very specific reasons why political science is a master science. First, means it is science. Science means it is a knowledge which masters should know. And from here we started understanding who are the masters. So, political science is a master science which masters should know. Next, it is a master science because it helps in the realization of the highest good. So, this part is not in their PDF. This is an addition which I am making. Fine. Because if the questions from his book Politics are exhausted, these are the new areas of the probable questions. Fine. So, because it helps in the realization of the highest good and The second thing is it guides all other sciences. So political science is a master science because it helps in the realization of the highest good, and it is a science which the masters should know, and I hope you are clear about the masters. Fine. So we will start that political science. It is a difficult thing, so please be very attentive in understanding this. So what he says, political science is a master science. Means the masters should be aware of political science. For example, as you are going to become the masters, you should learn political science. And if your background in political science, you can do more justice. Suppose in interview, examiners, they ask you, why have you chosen political science as your optional? Fine, you can always say political science is a master science, okay, because it helps in the realization of the highest good, and I believe that its knowledge is essential for the type of profession I am entering into it. Fine. So political science is a master science. So here science word is used for knowledge. Fine. So political science is a master of all knowledge. So now you write that Aristotle classifies knowledge. See, we are understanding knowledge in Socrates. We have understood knowledge in sophists. Now let us understand how Aristotle defines knowledge. So Aristotle classified knowledge, we can also use the word episteme, into three types. There are three types of sciences, three types of knowledges. There are three branches of knowledges according to Aristotle. Fine. So Aristotle classifies the sciences, that is episteme or knowledge, into three types. Fine. So there are three types of knowledge. First, pure knowledge. Pure knowledge, the Greek word Sophia. Fine. Practical knowledge, the Greek word phronesis. And Aristotle should be studied properly, because we will see the reiteration of similar ideas in Hannah Arendt. Fine. So, pure knowledge, practical knowledge, and productive knowledge. Techne. If you don't want to use the Greek words, you can leave. To understand political science, which type of knowledge it is, we have to understand how Aristotle describes knowledge. So, for Aristotle, knowledge is of three types: pure knowledge, practical knowledge, and productive knowledge. Fine. So, fine. So, pure knowledge is for the sake of knowledge. Knowledge which is only knowledge. It's not necessary that every knowledge can be put to human use, but still that knowledge is useful. Fine. So, pure knowledge. If you are involved in, let us say, physics, if you are involved in pure philosophy, then it is called Sophia, pure knowledge. For example, Buddha or Mahavira, they attained Kaivalya. In Hindi, it is called Kaivalya or Gyan. Fine. That is knowledge for the sake of knowledge. You can categorize, let us say, physics here. Fine. Now, practical knowledge means which you learn to put into practice in our day-to-day affairs. So, here he will put ethics and politics. Politics is one knowledge which has to be applied. Now, productive knowledge, which produces something related to craft, something related to production of something. So, you can put engineering, you can also put architecture, art, architecture. This will come under the productive knowledge. Fine. So, the knowledge can be categorized into pure knowledge, Sophia, practical knowledge, phronesis, and the productive knowledge, that is techne. Fine. So, out of these three, political science is phronesis. Fine. So, for Aristotle, politics and ethics are practical knowledge. Practical knowledge means to be applied. In our day to day affairs. Fine. So political science is a practical knowledge which is applied in our day to day affairs. Fine. This much is clear. You may find it little bit difficult, but try to understand it. Fine. Now we will make a comparison between Plato and Aristotle over the type of knowledge. Comparison between Plato and Aristotle over the type of knowledge the ruler, or if I say for Aristotle, master should pursue. Which type of knowledge? That is why it is more advisable that if you are going for civil services, choose political science as an optional rather than physics as an optional or philosophy as an optional. Fine. So political science is a master science. Even this statement of Aristotle is made to rectify Plato. Fine. So what political science? Master science means the science which is to be learned by the masters. Fine. So if we say Plato want rulers to learn philosophy. And for Plato, philosophy means absolute knowledge, means true knowledge, means ultimate knowledge. Fine. Sophia, love for philosophy, physics. Fine. Ruler, to learn absolute knowledge, true knowledge, ultimate knowledge, and or the knowledge of idea. Ruler has to learn philosophy. What is philosophy? Absolute knowledge, true knowledge, idea. Fine. Okay. Why? Why ruler should have absolute knowledge? Why? Because for Plato, knowledge of idea is absolute, pure knowledge, and again this is permanent because idea is permanent, it is not changing. So Plato recommended that the ruler, he said that until philosophers are the rulers or rulers learn philosophy, and for Plato philosophy is pure knowledge. Philosophy is Sophia. Fine. Now as we know that Aristotle is not only the greatest disciple of Plato, he is also the greatest critic of Plato. Fine. Two things you should know: the greatest disciple of Plato as well as the greatest critic of Plato. Fine. So, which type of knowledge a ruler should have? Plato says, learn philosophy. What Aristotle says. Fine. Now, the second thing is Aristotle was also influenced by his father, who was the physician in the court of father of Alexander. And so Aristotle developed interest in the empirical investigation. So Aristotle, in his theory of form, suggest that even matter is important. We cannot reject the world in which we live as nothing but the world of illusions. Fine. So, fine. So, according to Aristotle, a ruler has to be worldly wise. Ruler has to be worldly wise rather than just being wise in the world of ideas. So what Aristotle says? Aristotle says that the ruler should be worldly wise. Fine. How you will handle this world rather than the world of ideas, because ultimately you are going to rule in this world, not the world of ideas. You will be not dealing with the gods, you will be dealing with the real humans. So, instead of attaining a pure knowledge like physics or philosophy, ruler should learn politics and ethics, which are the practical knowledge, because a ruler has to be worldly wise rather than wise in the world of ideas. So he doesn't have problem that in other sciences learn physics, learn chemistry, learn philosophy, but what is essential, you cannot ignore politics and ethics, because you have to live in this world. Fine. So ruler has to be worldly wise rather than wise in the world of ideas. Okay. Now, if ruler has to be worldly wise, if ruler has to be worldly wise, okay, he needs to learn phronesis or practical science. What is political science? Practical science. That is politics and ethics rather than phronesis. Rather than Sophia. It's fine, learn Sophia, but you cannot avoid this. Fine. So that is why if you see the weightage of science and technology or other subjects is very small in your GS, but ethics is full paper, polity and governance is the full paper. Fine. So your understanding of polity and governance and ethics will be very, very critical in your selection, because the scope of other subjects is not that vast. Okay. So ruler has to be worldly wise, ruler has to learn phronesis and not Sophia. Fine. Now, thus political science is a practical science. Fine. And therefore political science deals with the knowledge of this world. So if from Indian history I give the example, then you must have heard about Muhammad Tughlaq. So Muhammad Tughlaq is known as the wisest fool. So Muhammad Tughlaq had learnt Sophia. And if I talk about Akbar, Akbar was not literate, but Akbar had the common sense, and that is why among the rulers who ruled the country, Akbar and Ashok, only they are known as the great. So which ruler should be your model? Not one who is a philosopher. You can even say Aurangzeb is a philosopher looking for pure religion, but it was Akbar, it was Ashoka later on which deserved to be known as the great ruler. So in your front, because you are going to join the administration, who should be your ideal? I think you can learn from Akbar that how to manage the religious diversity. You should learn diplomacy from Akbar. Fine. So one of my favorite figures in the India's history Obviously Akbar, because he represent the ruler of Aristotle, who is worldly wise. So if you want in your answers, you can give examples from the Indian history. Again, if you talk very recently, I'll say Nehru comes in the category of philosopher king and Sardar Patel comes in the category of phronesis. Fine. So political science is a master science that deals with the knowledge of this world. Now, and if you study political science, you will become worldly wise. So knowledge of this world. Fine. Now, in this world, you see everything is changing. Potentiality into actuality, actuality and potentiality, that change keeps on happening. Fine. So the characteristic feature of this world is change, though Aristotle also held that every change is with some purpose. Fine. So thus political science is a practical science that deals with the knowledge of this world. Fine. Now this world is a world of change. This world is a world of change. Fine. This world is a world of change. Fine. So political science cannot be exact science. Political science cannot be exact science like other sciences like mathematics, etc. Fine. So political science is the practical science and it is not the exact science. Fine. Again, for Aristotle, political science and ethics are overlapping. For Aristotle, the political science and ethics are overlapping, or you can say there is no difference in politics and ethics. There is no difference actually in politics and ethics. Fine. Because both are practical sciences. Fine. And there is no difference in politics and ethics. It means the masters need to learn ethics. Fine, and that is why you have to study even Aristotle's Nicomachean ethics. So, political science is a science which masters should know, and what masters should know? They should know ethics. Fine. Now, what is ethics? What do you learn when you study ethics? Fine. The term ethics come from the term ethos. Ethos means values. The term ethics come from the word ethos. Ethos means values, means what is the desirable way of life. Or basically, which way of life is valuable, worth, or you can say ethics teaches you what is the right approach or conduct. Fine. So in ethics, when you give the paper of ethics, half of the questions are the case studies, because you have to decide what is the right course of action which you will be taking. Fine. So in our day-to-day life, we often face lot of dilemma, and the knowledge of ethics and being ethical help us in addressing those dilemma. Fine. So in our day-to-day life, we face dilemma. Now, ethics is a practical science. That is why when you do the case studies, it is suggested, don't try to appear purely idealistic, because the pure idea you cannot put into practice. So your answers of ethics should also be practical, should also be feasible. Fine. So your answer should not be extreme. You have to be worldly wise. You have to be pragmatic in your approach. While doing ethics paper, you don't have to be idealistic in your approach. You have to be pragmatic in your approach, because that is ethics. Fine. So in our day-to-day life we face dilemma. So the knowledge of ethics help us to under or to deal with dilemma. Means if we know, if we have the knowledge of ethics, we can take right action. We can take right action. So the masters, they need to learn phronesis. Fine. And phronesis, ethics is a phronesis. So ethics tell you what is the right conduct for an individual. Fine. So many students do not understand the meaning of ethics. So ethics is to tell you what is the right conduct for person. Fine. Now, what is morality? Ethics and morality is interlinked. Morality is social in nature. Ethics is, when you talk about ethics, we are talking at individual level. How individual will decide. Fine. When you talk about morality, means the conduct or actions approved by society. If society consider it as right, it becomes morality. Fine. And politics. Politics can be called as collective ethics. Fine. So when we talk about ethical decisions or right decisions, at the level of the state as such, it is called politics. Fine. So Socrates, Plato, Aristotle, and in India, Gandhi didn't make a separation between politics and ethics because a state is an individual writ large. Fine. You cannot say that in my personal life I am ethical, but in political life I have to take some hard decisions or unethical decisions. Fine. So, if we look into the linguistic contexts of these words, means how they were used in ancient Greece, they were used interchangeably. Though at present we see as if ethics and politics are two opposite things, but this is not the way ancient thinkers have seen. Who made the separation between politics and ethics? Machiavelli. Fine. So basically, the masters have to learn ethics. Fine. So ethics tell you what is good life. Fine. So ethics teaches you good life, or ethics is a study which helps you in development of your moral character. Fine. So ethics is knowledge about good life, right conduct, moral conduct. Fine. Now the question is, why to know good life? Why to know what is good life? So basically, what is the importance of ethics? If you will study ethics, you will understand what is good life or what is right conduct, or you will learn morality or what is a moral character. Fine. So that is the importance of ethics. But the question is, why we need to be concerned about the good life? The reason is, according to Aristotle, it is very natural for us to aspire for good life. Why should we aspire for good life. Fine. The reason is, it is very natural. Tell me, when you write an answer and you get good in that answer, what happens to you? You feel happy? Fine. Because we should lead good life, that is virtuous life, because we all want to be happy. Fine. So the connection of good is with happiness. Fine. So ultimately, if you are ethical, you will have good life, and you will be having happiness, which is ultimately the purpose of life. Fine. So let me connect it. Political science is a master science. Political science is a science to be learned by the masters. Masters don't need to learn Sophia. Masters need to learn phronesis. Among phronesis comes politics and ethics. Politics and ethics are not different. When you talk about ethics, you are talking at the level of individual. When you are talking about politics, you are talking at the level of the state. So politics and ethics. So what is ethics? Ethics tells you which life is a good life. Then why you should care about the good life? Because the ultimate purpose of the life is happiness, and happiness can come only when you lead a good life. Fine. So what is the purpose of ethics? To give good life to the person. What is the purpose of politics? To give good life to those who live in the state. So what does that mean? All political questions are essentially ethical questions. All political questions are essentially ethical questions. Politics has to deal with good life, good policies, good economics, everything good. Good public policy. Fine. So, ethics means to give a good life. Now, ultimately, why good? Because good is a source of happiness. And what is the purpose of life? Happiness. So now we will understand Aristotle's conception of happiness. In ethics paper, there was a question, what is happiness? Now, some people have written that when I see a child or a hungry child eating something or having an ice cream, poor child having an ice cream, or when I get up and I see a child smiling in dream, that is happiness. But that is a very raw understanding of happiness. Even suppose if it is an ethics answers you cannot give simply on in a layman term. Though it is a general studies, but they have given you a prescribed syllabus, so it should not be in a layman term. Okay. So we will now understand happiness according to Aristotle. Fine. So now Aristotle, or a Greek word for happiness, is eudaimonia. Greek word for happiness is eudaimonia. So, the objective of the life of man is happiness, or the achievement of eudaimonia. Okay. Now, eudaimonia literally means flourishing. Earlier also we see that our elders, they bless us, hello fullo. Fine. So flourishing means follow fullo. So you get happiness when you flourish. Fine. Now flourish. You get happiness when you flourish. But flourishing of what? Flourishing of what? Is flourishing of business, is flourishing of wealth, means you are flourishing, or is flourishing of honors. What is flourishing? Is having lot of pleasure. What exactly is flourishing? And you should be care about flourishing of what? Fine. So according to Aristotle, true happiness means achievement of the highest good. Achievement of the highest good in highest good with excellence. So knowledge is virtue. Lot of things are included here. So the purpose of why we try to be good, why we all want to be good, fine, because goodness gives us happiness. Happiness word in the Greek time used to be eudaimonia. Eudaimonia means flourishing, flourishing of the highest good, or the flourishing of highest good or the highest quality. You can say it is like happiness mean achievement of the, or the flourishing of the highest quality with excellence. Fine. So what Aristotle says that we should aspire for the highest happiness. Fine. Now the question is, which happiness is highest? Which happiness is the highest happiness? That is, which is end in itself and not the means to an end, not a means to an end. Fine. So we should aspire for highest happiness, and highest happiness is an end in itself, and it is not just a means to an end. So Aristotle distinguishes between pleasure and happiness. So in Western philosophy, pleasure and happiness is distinguished, and pleasure is used for satisfaction of physical needs. Pleasure is satisfaction of the physical needs. Fine. So distinction between pleasure and happiness. Similarly, wealth. being wealthy is not being happy. Fine. So wealth versus happiness. So wealth can be a means but not end. The most wealthy people are not necessarily the most happy people. Fine. Then he says honor versus happiness. So honor alone does not give happiness. It's not that a person in his life wants only honor and nothing else, or a person in his life want only wealth, nothing else, or pleasures. There is something more to these things, because pleasure, wealth and honor, they are not end in themselves. So they are not the ultimate happiness. Fine. Now, most of the time, we think happiness is an emotion, or the feeling in our mind. So most of the time people think as if happiness is an emotion or happiness is a feeling in our mind. Fine. But what Aristotle tells, Aristotle doesn't say happiness is emotion or feeling. Fine. Aristotle tells happiness is action. Fine. So happiness is not an emotion. For Aristotle, happiness is action. Fine. Now happiness is action. This leads to the development of Aristotle's theory of ethics. It leads to the development of Aristotle's theory of ethics. Now, Aristotle's theory of ethics is known as virtue ethics. Aristotle's theory of ethics is virtue ethics. So in ethics there are three types of theories. I am not going to go into the detail of it because you will study in ethics. One is deontological theory, other is consequentialist theory, and the third is virtue ethics. Okay, let me tell you just in brief. In brief, you can say that in ethics there are three types of theories: deontological, you can relate it with Immanuel Kant; consequentialist, you can relate it with Bentham; and the third one is virtue ethics. You can link it with Aristotle. Deontological means, see, ethical theories tells like what is a right conduct. Deontological theory says you believe in certain principles are right and you act according to that. Consequentialist theories say whether an action is right or wrong, that depends upon their consequences. And virtue ethics is a theory of action. Fine. So, deontology, we will come back to this theory when we will do roles. So, deontological theory means ethics theory is telling is what is the right conduct. That is a purpose of theory of ethics. So, the deontological theories, they tell like on the basis of reason, they determine certain principles as ethical, and they believe that all actions should be in accordance to these principles. Consequentialist theories, they rely on experience. So for them, if the consequence of any action is good, is pleasure, then if any action results into pleasure, then it is right. But virtue ethics is about character building. Virtue ethics is about character building. And actually, when you study political thought, you are doing the theories of ethics, political thought and political philosophy. We will study Rawls, we will study Mill. This is nothing. So, a political science student, that amount of understanding, the depth of understanding a political science student can have in ethics, no one else can have. So, you should be utilizing this information to have a sound base and have more mileage to over other students in your paper 4. Fine. So, virtue ethics and character building. Now I will explain virtue ethics. This is like putting things into action. So, for Aristotle, we do not become virtuous or good. We do not become virtuous or good just by knowing good. If you know what is good, if I know what is a good answer, for example, number of students ask me what is a good answer, how to write a good answer, fine. So if I know, even if I tell you all characteristics of a good answer, if I know a good answer, still I won't be able to write a good answer, fine, because we do not become virtuous just by knowing what is good. We become virtuous only by practicing what is good. Fine. So we don't become good just by knowing what is good. You cannot learn swimming by knowing the steps. You cannot learn to write a good answer, an excellent answer, or a virtuous answer that can give you the happiness you are looking for only by knowing what is a good answer. But virtuous require, it comes by practice. Fine. So, practice of good will develop the habit. If you do answer writing practice, you will develop the habit of writing. Fine. The practice will result into habit, and habit will become your character. This will become a part of your character. Doing things in an excellent manner will become not just your habit, it will rather become your character. It will become a part of your personality. You will come to be known as a good teacher, a good officer, a good person. People will attach good to you. That becomes your character, a good actor. So that goodness, that virtue, that excellence comes when you not just know when you practice it. Fine. So that is the essence of virtue ethics. Fine. So virtue ethics. So what is the purpose? The purpose of ethics when applied at collectively or politics is to help people to develop sound character, and this will come, it will come only by practice. How it will come? It will come only by practice. Fine. So it requires practice, it requires action. So for Aristotle, highest or ultimate amount of happiness what is ultimate amount of happiness? When we do the highest form of activity. When we do the highest form of activity with excellence. So, what is the ultimate happiness? When we do, this do word is very important. That is why happiness is action. When we do the highest form of activity with excellence. Fine. So, what is the highest form of activity? This is the question. And how do we achieve excellence in it? What is the highest form of activity and how we achieve excellence in it? So the highest form of activity. And later on, when I will teach Hannah Arendt, you can relate it. Fine. So, he says that all living things, all living beings perform three types of activities. All living things perform three types of activities. First, vegetative. Vegetative is normal, reproductive means we have no control over it. Vegetative activities, reproductive, excretory and all these things, fine. So this activity is called vegetative because even plants perform. Next is desires or passions. Activities guided by desires and passions, this even animals perform. And then intellectual activity. This only humans perform. Fine. So basically excellence consists in doing the highest, in able to do the highest form of activity in excellent form. So the activities performed by livings. Which activity is highest? Intellectual activity. Fine. So animals and ethics will come under intellectual activity. That is why we cannot teach ethics to the animals. You can teach ethics only to human. Fine. So basically intellectual activity is of the highest form, and this is the activity which only humans perform. Fine. Now this intellectual activity is also of two types. This intellectual activity, one is Sophia, which is pure knowledge, which is meant for person's own growth. Next is phronesis, means understanding the moral character, which is ethics and politics. Fine. So the highest activity in social sphere is the knowledge and practice of ethics. Now, what is right and where will you practice? This can be practiced or developed by participation in the affairs of city state. Fine? Because in city state we have opportunity to, in city state we have opportunity to discuss, debate with fellow citizens. And when we do it on the continuous basis, we develop excellence. And this excellence, fine, so performance of highest activity with excellence is true happiness. Fine. So, for humans, the highest happiness will not come only in vegetative activities. For humans, the highest happiness will not come only by fulfillment of desires. For humans, the highest happiness will come when they come together to find out what is ethics. So that is why ethics belong to humans. You cannot teach ethics to the animals because they do not have that characteristic. Fine. And thus man, understand this point because this is the foundation of Western philosophy. Fine. Thus man is by nature rational, because this characteristic has been given to man only, or it has been given by God only to man. Since man is by nature rational, man is by nature ethical. Fine. And what is ethics? This you understand when you participate in the affairs of city-state. So, man is by nature political, and to realize his true nature, man has to live in the state and a state is an institution without which it is not possible to have a virtuous life. Fine. Since ethics deals with humans, so the knowledge of ethics and politics come under the system of humanities. We call it humanities. Fine. So since man is rational, so man is ethical, so man, and this ethical impulse and the rational thing can be fulfilled only when you participate in the affairs of the city state, and this is what is the scope of political science as a discipline, and that is why political science is a master science, because it helps in the attainment of the highest good. Fine. So thus political science is a master science because it gives opportunity for the attainment of the highest good. So you can be most happy only when you study political science. I hope you understood the concept. Thank you.